Hello and welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast. My name is Terry, and the secret ingredient to my potato salad is sour cream. This chat features Mike Caron, a seasoned Nickelodeon live-action director who most recently dived into the world of live-action and animation mix directing with Paramount Plus's Fairly OddParents. Fairly Otter. Mike is most well known for his work on Game Shakers and Henry Danger, and in this chat he shares how he worked his way up from being an actor on The Young and the Restless to becoming a Nickelodeon producer and director. He's also going to share some behind the scenes into the unique pipeline they created for the live action animation mix on Fairly Otter, as well as the unique technique to get the actors interacting with the animated characters in the most dynamic ways possible. But first, this episode is sponsored by Hue, makers of colorful plug-and-play cameras for learning, work, and play. Originally designed for teachers, Hue cameras can also be used for creative activities such as capturing hand-drawn pencil tests and shooting behind-the-scenes footage, time-lapse videos, and stop-motion animation. The cameras have flexible, posable necks, manual focus controls, and they're compatible with Dragon Frame, OBS, Twitch, Zoom, and many other creative apps. Visit huehd.com to learn more and follow @HueCameras on social media for news, fun, and giveaways. And as I've been saying for the last couple episodes, for a limited time only, search for the Hue HD Pro camera on Amazon.com and use code 10TerryAIP to get 10% off. And that code is valid until July 19th, 2020, which is actually next Tuesday. So if you're thinking of buying a Hue camera, go check one out immediately because this code is only valid for another week. I've included all the details to that in the description of this chat, so please check it out. And now, without further ado, let's dive in. Hi, Mike. How's it going today?
Hello. Nice to meet you. I've been a fan of your podcast, and I'm excited to be here. When my publicist let me know about it, I was like, oh man, I'm down. That sounds great.
Yeah, well, wow, thank you. I mean, fan of your work too. You know, you're a Nickelodeon staple at this point.
Wow, a Nickelodeon staple. I guess it makes sense. I'll take that. Yeah.
What would you describe it?
I don't know. It's funny. It just caught me funny. A Nickelodeon staple. I've done so many. It's in this business. Whenever you hear that you're actually been a part of something for as long as you have, sometimes you're like, wow, because by definition, our business is so, you kind of jump around so much that at times I look back and go, I remember when I first got to the town, there'd be these older, professionals, and they'd be like, kid, I've been in this business 25 years, 23 years, 20 years. And I'd be like, man, that's a long time. Well, I'm sitting here saying the same thing, and I'm like, wow, oh my gosh, I have been in this business a long time. So I guess it's really nice to hear you're a staple of anything. So
well, congratulations on that. And I'm super interested to chat with you because with Nickelodeon specifically, they have the whole animation side, and then they have the whole live action side, and you're a live action guy. But now you're crossing over to animation. But with the new show Fairly OddParents, Fairly Otter.
Fairly Otter. We're fairly otter. We're not just odd. We're just fairly otter. Just on this side of it.
But before we get into that, I just want to know how you got into directing in the first place, all these TV shows and everything, because you started off, if I recall correctly from what I read, were you an actor on The Young and the Restless?
I was an actor on The Young and the Restless. So we talked a little bit before this started about everyone's journey into Hollywood. And I suppose anyone's journey in any business, but Hollywood, if a corporate America or a corporate job is defined as you start in a mailroom and then you go to this, it's a very linear path, or it can be. Hollywood ain't. So you can go from A to M, back to C, over to J. It's a very nonlinear path. So yes, when I came out here, I wanted to be an actor. It's all I wanted to do as a kid. And, when I went to high school, I did all the school plays there. And then when I went to college, University of Missouri, I kind of got away from it for a little bit because I thought I would get a degree in journalism, which is what Mizzou's known for, because I thought, well, let me get a real degree just in case this acting stuff doesn't work. And by my sophomore year hit, I couldn't I just couldn't stay away from it and had to just sort of be what I wanted to be. And the day I got into the journalism school at Mizzou, I called my parents and I was like, I don't want to go to journalism school. I want to get a theater degree and I want to act. And, and my parents were lovely and wonderful. And to this day, I still thank them for not, now granted, my father was a little like, now, are you sure? But you know what? We never looked back. So, so I graduated, packed up the car and drove to Hollywood and stood underneath the Hollywood sign and said, all right, who wants me?
How did that? So you packed up your car and drove to Hollywood and literally stood under the sign. How did that feel? Did you feel like super, excited on top of the world, or like super scared? What am I doing?
Oh my God, you're 21 years old. You think that's your mountain to conquer. I mean, you have no fear, which is wonderful about being that age and doing something like that. So no, it felt great. It felt right. Let's put it that way. Like I felt like, okay, everything I've been doing, this is the right call. And, like every actor, you try to get your agent, you send out, and back in that day, I remember sitting on my apartment floor with all my manila envelopes and my headshot, my resumes, and writing out the address. And you actually mailed off your resume. I mean, believe it or not, and got a call from an agent, and they took me and auditioned for Young and Restless. And I got the part.
Pretty quickly.
About a year into it. The thing about Hollywood.
A year from standing under the Hollywood sign, getting your first gig.
Yep. Yeah.
What keeps like I said, now it's not that year. Like, you're like super. Did you feel super discouraged, or like they haven't discovered me yet, or like I got to keep trying and putting myself out there? And
here's at least for me, the misnomer was this. I thought as an actor, a young actor, you arrived in Hollywood and you struggled from bit part to bit part. The headline being you just kept booking bit part to bit part until you got your big break.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the way it goes. You struggle from audition to audition to audition and pray to the heavens that you get a bit part. And then hopefully the bit, it's a numbers game, for every 100 auditions, hopefully you book one or two of them. And that's what I did. I auditioned for a ton of stuff. And I loved soap operas. My mom watched them growing up. And of course I got hooked on, I was a Days of Our Lives guy through high school and college. So I always thought soaps would be a blast to do. I love the storytelling, the drama. And I booked a part, and I wasn't like a lead part. There was an actor named Eddie Cibrian who was the lead. He was the lead of that particular storyline, and he was up against Victor Newman's son, and this other guy and I were his best friends. So we were always like the exposition of the episode, telling what Eddie was up to, or, what, ruthless things he was pulling on the kid. And it was about a 1.5 year run, not quite 2 years, about a 1.5 years. And I loved it. I mean, I didn't have to I worked at Barnes and Noble in the stock room to pay the bills, pay the rent. And for the first time, I didn't have to do that. I lived like an actor, and it was glorious. Absolutely glorious.
Amazing. So you had this dream of becoming an actor. You go to theater school, you arrive in Hollywood, you struggle from audition to audition, you get a break a year in, and then you're good for 1.5 years. How do you end up, maybe you can fast forward a bit. How do you end up from this like acting, journey and staying within that to ending up, what happened to get your first directing gig in TV?
That takes an amazingly long time to go up that. Now, to get up that hill, directing is, I believe it's the accumulation of a lot of, I didn't go to film school, so it's not like I popped out of a film school like a USC, UCLA, Chapman, and just instantly know that's what I wanted to do. So to answer your question, the shortest version of it is, you get to a point as an actor where you realize, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make a career out of this. I just met my wife, and I wanted a family, and and of course you're thinking, how do you make money and support yourself? That's all part of the business. And long story short, I took a job. I had auditioned for a show called Passions, and that producer on that show had worked on Young and the Restless. Stage manager is a position on a soap opera that you run the stage, you get notes from the director who's in the booth, and you kind of run the whole thing. That stage manager got fired. this producer knew that I had just a job in the warehouse there, and said, well, what about Mike Caron? I mean, he was an actor on soaps. This might be a good fit as a stage manager. So next thing I know, I'm standing on a stage. I'm in the Directors Guild of America, and I am now running a soap opera stage. And as scared as I was about, look, in the beginning, it's a job. It's like, oh my gosh, this is a great job in the Directors Guild and all these great things. But the job's hard, and you get out there, but I mentally and emotionally fell in love with it.
Yeah.
I loved being on that side of the camera, and now not only being able to scratch your acting itch, so to speak, because you're engaging with actors all day, but you're also now a part, if not leading, how it's going to look and how the background cross. And, the director would give me a note in my ear, and I'd have to, sometimes the director would be like, yeah, just tell him to just, bah, 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 bah. And I'd be standing there like I'm talking to you going, we think it'd be really good maybe if you just moved over here, and maybe that line you give a little more. So you learned basic skill sets on how to kind of do that. And a stage manager position, sometimes different people would come in and rotate. And one of a dear friend of mine, Terry, did that. She called me one day and said, hey, listen, we have an opening at this lovely little kid show about these two brothers on Nickelodeon. And I went, oh, Nickelodeon. Okay, yeah. And I go, what's it called? And she goes, it's called Drake and Josh. And I went, oh, I don't think I've heard of that, but it sounds lovely. And I went there and never left. So there you go. So I went to Drake and Josh as an AD, and Drake and Josh led to Victorious. Victorious led, or Drake and Josh led to Zoe. Zoe led to iCarly. iCarly led to Victorious. Victorious led to Sam and Cat. Sam and Cat led to Henry Danger. Henry Danger led to Game Shakers. Game Shakers, Henry Danger led to Danger Force. Danger Force led to Fairly Odd Parents.
That's insane. So,
voila.
Okay, I guess I forced you to fast forward, but I want to rewind a bit. So essentially you kind of went to directing school, but it was as a job, as like that first stage manager set thing.
Correct.
Wow.
And that's where I learned the technical skills of, how cameras work. And, and soap operas are shot with 4 cameras. It's multi-camera, which is a very different process than a single camera. So, most of the stuff that you did, even when I was in college, just doing student films, and when you first come to LA, you answer ads from USC students or whatever to do their films, and that's all single camera. But the 4 camera to me was like, wow. I mean, that's, you got 4 cameras, and how to know how to edit and line cut, and it's like a boot camp. It really was. It was a boot camp, and but I just took to it. It was the beginning of my aha moment about what I want to do when I grow up.
Well, you said you mentally fell in love with it, but it sounds like a kind of grueling job to start as just from an actor to go right into that. What kept you going through that? Because at the same time, like when you go to school, you're learning shot composition and all the filmography and stuff like that. Were you also trying to like brush up on this all on the side by like self-studying, or just learning through who you're working with? And then also like, thriving in that role and doing a good enough job that people were like, oh, dang, Mike is our guy,
Thank God they thought that. You know what? It's, that's a really good question. When you, growing up and always watching movies and loving movies. And then when I went to college, I was the type of kid that, I played sports my whole life. I was a baseball player. And I umpired all the time. So I'm going with this. So during the summers, I'd come home and I'd umpire, but I was the kid that after I got done umpiring my games, I ran down to the local theater for $1 and I just watched movies nonstop. And if I didn't do that, I'd go to the local, Blockbuster and just rent movies and watch. So what would happen is I was learning the different skills on stage. I would have these moments of, that's how they must have done that in that movie. Or, and of course now all of us, I mean, I don't know about you, but anytime a movie comes out on Blu-ray or, digitally released, I go to the behind the scenes like that because I want to see how they do it, because now everything's so big and complicated. So you learn on the fly a little bit, but you've got to be open to learning. For all of our listeners right now who are, that are trying to get in the industry or they're studying it, you've got to be open to learn not only from the books and from what you're studying, but people that have done it. People are amazingly generous with tips and ideas if you're open enough to hear them. And I asked everybody. I had no problem standing on that stage and going, look, everybody, I get it. I just sort of landed here, but I'm going to do the best I can. I will listen to everybody, and I did. And you get better. That's how it works.
I can tell you're super passionate about this, just as it's coming across, and just going to the theater every day and just watching stuff. I'm wondering, from a different perspective, like when somebody's looking for an opportunity to bring on a director, what makes them think of you and say yes to you? Like, because obviously, there's tons of people who want to get into directing and whatnot, but what makes you come top of mind to them?
I hope it's what you said. I mean, I am passionate about what I do. I love what I do. And what I love about what I do is, and I mentioned earlier, I'm a sports guy by, I'm playing sports my whole life. I love the team. Like that's always what appealed to me about sports, is what appeals to me about watching sports. And of course, as I got into movies, understanding how they're made, I very quickly understood that, the cliche about a chain is only as strongest as its weakest link. Did I say that right? Is that the way it goes?
Yeah. Strongest as the weakest link. As weak as the strongest link.
Yes, that's it. I don't know. But anyway, but the point being is, everybody on that stage is just as important as the other. Yeah. And I know it's easy to say, well, but what about the cast? Or what about, intuitively, yes, I know you have to have the cast. But once everyone's there, you need to all be on the same page and everyone's there for one purpose, and that's to make the show as good as it can be. And if you can get everybody from a directorial point of view inspired to want to do that. I mean, look, everyone's there to make their money, me included, actors included. That's what, it's just the way it goes. But at the point of paycheck, and then that next step, the inspiration, we've got 10 minutes left on the kids. Everyone needs to be on their A game and running around doing it. What makes them do that? And I take the responsibility of being a director and in charge of that, so serious, because that's what I do, and I want other people to do that as well, and know that they're appreciated in doing that. I mean, these are a team effort, these things.
So how do you do that as a director? I've been on various projects where the director is lovely and everybody feels super passionate, inspired, and to work with this person, and they get everybody rallied up. And I've also worked on projects where, people are talking behind the scenes about, this or that and the drama or whatnot. Like, how do you, because you're dealing with so many people, and as a director, and you want this show to be the best it can be. How do you rally everybody up to that one purpose? Like, that's super tough.
I call it, my stages are a democracy, meaning everybody has a voice, hopefully, that's what I try to do. Everyone has a voice. And a good friend of mine, an assistant director that I work with, Robin Pratt, she always has this great saying. She's like, everyone can be a hero at any moment. Anyone can be the hero. And she's so right. I mean, it could literally be, sometimes you're trying to get something done and there's this chaos. And then literally it could be, I don't know, the school teacher, the actor's teacher, or someone walks by and goes, in that last take, I don't think that the chair was over there. And all of a sudden everyone goes, oh my God, you're so right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And albeit that's a tiny little detail and whatever, but that's what it's all about. Anyone can be a hero at any moment. So, and what I say by democracy, especially when it comes to actors, especially children, young adult actors, I love to hear their ideas when it comes to doing something. I will listen to anyone's idea. At the end of the day, as the director, you're the one that ultimately has to call the play and, hike the ball, if you will, another sports metaphor. But getting to that point, I'll listen to everyone's contribution on how to make that play the best it can be. I find it, certainly there's more autonomous directors than others, meaning they have a very specific vision, and that's okay too. I'm not, there's all roads lead to Rome, but that's the way, at least I come to it.
I love that, actually. I mean, like, I've worked, as a cog in the wheel on projects that you also love, you want to bring your ideas and make things better. And it feels I know what it's like to feel super valued when, you know, the director or other people hear your idea and actually like, you know, even if they don't take it, but they're still considering it as part of the overall vision. Like it's really great. And I think even what you said, you know, a teacher walks by and the chair's out of place. Like, you know, if you weren't open to hearing that, you would look at it later and be like, why did nobody tell me the chair's out of place?
Well, and
you know, the person didn't even feel comfortable telling you.
And that's exactly it. And that's my friend Robin. I mean, anyone can be the hero at any given time. And there's no, you know, ego to it. That has nothing to do with the set dresser missed something. Poor Rick is our set dresser, Rick Cohen. He's running around dealing with 1,000 things. I mean, you know, and we're all human. You know, our business, what makes it so much fun when people talk about, oh my God, show business is so fun. It is the humanity of everyone enjoying this very intimate experience on a stage, you know, working together for this thing. You know, I stand on that stage sometimes 16, back on the soap opera, 17 hours sometimes. You'd be standing there with all these people. How can you not form a band of sisters and brothers? You know, I mean, it's the way it, you know, I mean,
I love that you have this mentality because, you know, not everybody does. And even, you know, I suspect when you said like the director's yelling in your ear and you're just filtering through the actors like, oh, move slightly to the left. I suspect you have some experience the opposite.
It was, I tell you, there is, I mean, it's been so long, but man, we had this one director, he was just a screamer, right? He just scream. And I mean, just in my ear, and I'd have to turn down my little belt pack because I didn't want the actor to hear the director screaming. So I'd turn it down. It's smoke and mirrors, you know, smoke and mirrors.
I love that. So let's talk about Fairly Odd Parents. You know, this is your first animated, well, it's live action animated fusion, but I'm wondering, you know, all your experience on soap operas and TV shows and everything, I'm assuming you've had to take a completely different approach with creating something that has to have animation on top of it and you know, changing even the style. I'm wondering if you can tell me, you know, what are some of the top things that you had to change to make the live action kind of fuse with animation and make it, you know, a seamless experience for both the pipeline and the viewer at the end of the day?
In full disclosure, I have never done animation until this show. I've never, you know, I had no experience, if you will, working on. I mean, I've heard, you know, being with Nickelodeon all these years. Obviously, I knew of the shows, but I and more or less I knew a lot of actors that did the voice talent, you know, and so that's kind of how that was my experience.
You're never just walking through the animation department and
No, but I'll tell you this, the Nickelodeon animation building is awesome. It is the coolest. You talk about the most fun. I mean,
you're like, your next project, can I just do 100% animation? Let's get rid of it.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool because it's so I hate that it's so creative, but it really is. I mean, because it's all so back to that, your question, when dear friend of mine and who I've worked with for a long time, Chris Nowak, Chris, you know, he created Danger Force, the show that I also direct and produce on, and just uber talented. Chris can tell a story like nobody else. And Nickelodeon basically had asked him, we have the Fairly Odd Parents franchise. Is this something you and your team can do? We want to do the amalgamation of live action and animation. So as Chris was walking me through it, because I didn't have as much experience in the animation part, in my brain, I was like, okay, well, the animation will be what the animation is going to be. That is going to be computer generated and drawn, and they're going to do what they're going to do. And I keyed in on the live action. Okay, I've got my kids and I've got, you know, this town of Dimsdale. Well, very quickly, what you realize is, you know, our first day of rehearsal or just talking with the kids, they were like, okay, well, where's Cosmo and Wanda going to be? Where's Jorgen von Strungel going to be? How do I, you know, and I'd be like, well, that's a really good question. And it dawned on me very fast how, you know, I think actors these days are getting more and more used to acting on a green screen, right? That, you know, I mean, as far back as George Lucas in the prequels, I remember Sam Jackson going, I don't know, man, I was looking at a green screen, just like waving my lightsaber, and later the magic would be done. But with the kids, and for it to look right, I needed to come up very quickly with a solution to giving them something to act with. Yeah. You know, that's a tall tale just to say, okay, look over there and, you know, act, and someone off camera is reading Cosmo Wanda's
What you're
line.
saying right now reminds me of like watching, I think it's Pete's Dragon, the Disney film, like when I was a kid.
Yes.
And the kid's eye line is all, it never even, he's never looking at the dragon. He's always just looking somewhere
Yes.
off. And it just broke, like even as like, I don't know, a 10-year-old kid, it just broke the whole experience for me where it just didn't feel real at all because the kid is they're never looking at each other.
Well, and you just said it. You know, as you watch, we're such a smart audience. The movie going audience is so smart now because of all those behind the scenes, right? We know how things get done.
Yeah.
We inherently know the dragon ain't real. Dragons don't exist. The dragon is a green screen computer generated thing. But you still need to, you know, do it to the point where the audience, even the 10-year-olds, immerse themselves into it without going, well, why are they looking over there when the last frame the dragon was over here? You know, you have to be really good. You have to be very, very aware of all that. So what I did was our production designer, Tristan Daly, the so brilliant Tristan Daly, I got together with him and I was like, look, can I have a cardboard cutout of all of the animated creatures? And can it be like on some type of retracting device that it can move and do what it's going to do? And I went with that idea to Chris and the other co-executive producer, Sam Martin, and they doubled down and were like, well, you know what? We all got together and said, well, we also need real actors. Like because the rhythm of the scene, like later when we got Cosmo and Wanda, Dean and their voices.
Yeah. Hello. Pause.
Yes.
So I'm good. Pause.
The rhythm of the scene had to be correct. Right. So that being said, we hired these two amazing actresses, Dre Swain and Jen Cater, and our special effects department built them a rig so that their script could sit on a metal rig in front of them and they could have their hands to then be in the scene, move the animated pieces around, but still have the script in front of them. So it wasn't like, you know, a 1,000 props in their hands trying to do this. And again, look at that team effort to do that. Ideas from the director, the executive producers, the production designer, the special effects. Clark James was like, well, you know, I can build them this. That's a great idea, Clark. And the next thing you know, all these people get this idea and now we know how to move forward. And the actors, Tyler and Audrey, who have the most interaction with the fairies, now they're acting with real people. And I do believe that's the key to what we were doing with the amalgamation of animation and live action. Because now when I shot, like when actually we called action and rolled the cameras, I couldn't have the fairies there, you know, because you can't. Yeah. But that being said, because we rehearsed 2 days with all that, their muscle memory built up, that to your point, the eye line, they knew where Cosmo and Wanda were. The cameraman.
So when you're practicing, you have these cardboard cutouts and the actor interacting with them. And then for the final shot, you remove the cardboard cutouts.
Correct. They cannot be there.
And not, oh, wow. Because I would still think that there would be like a disconnect between where somebody's looking, or they just think, you know, they're just looking in the space where they're usually looking. No, but that's interesting.
No,
also, a random question, you know, from an animation pipeline, the storyboards are locked, you know, the puppets are tied down, et cetera, et cetera. And like the animation is super locked and just like it's followed it, and it's everything's cut before you animate. Like it's done. But with live action, you know, I guess what I'm asking is, how integrated and locked are the storyboards with the animation in the live action?
They're not. Meaning, no, we worked with this wonderful company, Boxel, who are based, I believe, I know they're in Mexico, but the city escapes me, but we always had two representatives on set from Boxel who would be our consultants, if you will, or, you know, I mean, they were the liaison from what we were doing on set to how it was eventually going to be done. And so what I realized too is I was setting it up because the fairies are so frantic in their movement and stuff. I could tell them, like, okay, I want Cosmo. What I'm doing here, Cosmo's going to fly. He's going to land on Timmy's shoulder, and then Timmy's going to kind of pat him on the back. And he would look at that, and it was wonderful. He'd have an iPad. He could sketch it. He'd take a shot of the live action. And I'd see him turn around, he'd go like this. And I was like, okay, like this. And he turns the pad around. There's my two shot, if you will, with an animated Cosmo, Wanda, Timmy, played by Caleb, putting his hands on him. So you got real time rushes, if you will, that showed how the animation would work. So, but to answer your question, it was in reverse. We couldn't lock our live action is it's a process that hopefully allows itself for moments of this isn't working, we can try this, or that kind of thing. And that's where Boxell was invaluable being there, because if we did have to make a change, they would be able to relay that back to the mothership home bases where they were all animating. So but it gave you, I'll say this too, because we did it in reverse, because we weren't locked with storyboards necessarily, when we could get into editing, because the fairies weren't put in yet, sometimes a shot would work maybe with a different composition. Our brilliant editor, Andrew Hirsch, we'd have conversations after shooting it. And he's like, well, with this shot I could have the fairies move like this, and that might tell the story better. So again, back to teamwork, what makes the best show. And you have a lot of freedom that way when you're doing it with live action. But you're right. To the other point, when you're just doing pure animation, once that train leaves the station, you're kind of, yeah. I mean,
I'm wondering what's the experience like after shooting a scene and then getting it back from the animation department. What is that experience for you like?
Sometimes you're like, that's what it's going to look like, because you can only have it in your head what the fairies are going to do, or what Jen and Dre would be flying them around. But once they appeared on screen and their wands are glowing, and they would, like right now, if I'm looking at you and Cosmo went around your head, the glow of his fairiness, his being a fairy, the glow would come around your head. It's so real.
Yeah. Would you actually have like a light in scene, or would you do that all?
Nope. The genius of Boxell. No, the brilliance of animation,
So what was the most difficult thing? You've been through a lot of TV shows. What was the most challenging, other than I guess what you just described? That was the most challenging. What was the most maybe a different challenging thing that you weren't expecting when you got in the thick of this project?
I think it's the ability to. It's kind of what I just talked about, and also I think it's what we saw very early on, was because the fairies are such an important part of the story and have such an interaction with the cast, the kids. It was really trying to come up with a way to capture that cadence and that rhythm of the way Chris and Sam were writing, and the writers, real time, so it worked. There's a director in Hollywood that does a lot of multi-camera sitcoms, and legend is he doesn't look at the monitors. He just closes his eyes and listens to the cadence of the lines, because comedy is a very choreographed dance, and lines are written in such a way. There's a ba-ba-boom, 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 laugh, ba-ba-boom, ba-ba-boom, ba-ba-boom. And in order for the kids to understand that cadence, we had to figure that part out of it, is how to make the animation and the voices and the characters as real as they could be in the scene. And
was there, to add to that, Fairly OddParents is already an established show for many years. It already has its writing style and the joke style and everything. Did you have to kind of take that kind of acting that was already in and the storytelling and transfer it to live action, or were you taking a completely different approach?
I think, back to Chris and Sam, I say they're genius of the show. And I don't use that word, by the way. There's a lot of hyperbole, but I truly don't throw that word away. Writing is an amazing skill set. I can write, but certainly not. I just am amazed. Like whenever I get my first scripts, I'm always just like, man, how do they think of this? And not only think of it. Look, we can all sit around and go, oh, I got this great idea. Okay, well, here is a blank piece of paper. Take your pencil and take that idea and write out 48 pages. Yeah. Good luck. That's wow. I've tried to do that. And, guess what? 5 hours later, I've written fade in. It's hard. So to answer that question, what Chris and Sam did, the genius of what they did was they were able to take the energy, what Butch Harmon did with the Fairly OddParents show. Part of what made it so much fun was just the way it moved like a lightning, and just the movements, the jokes, the dialogue. And Chris and Sam were able to take that energy and put it into a live action environment and still pace it well that it doesn't make the viewer nauseous with it going so fast, that you can get away with in animation. Animation is a very different type of thing. So I'm not privy to the writer's room necessarily. I don't spend all the hours that they do, but my answer to that would be that's the genius of what they did. They were able to incorporate, when you watch the show, I feel you get that sense, that energy of the fairies and what they're doing and the magic and the poofs and everything. But at the same time, you still slow it down the way they did. And at its core, it's a show about heart. It's about, an outside girl, Viv, who moves in and has to start this new life in this crazy town. And then with, fairly odd parents, and has a new stepbrother, has a new stepmother, and has to, amalgamate into her family. If the show is about amalgamating animation with live action, it's also at its core, it's about how do families are made up of all kinds of different things. And in our case, it's, stepmoms and stepbrothers and then steps, it's, that's the heart that drives the story. The Fairly Odd Parents help with that. But it
almost feels like the heart that's driving your story, from just talking about your career and how, the democracy and everybody's a hero and it's made up of so many parts. It kind of mimics that. It's really nice.
I love that. I don't know about you, but when I watch movies or when I think about like my favorite movies or favorite TV shows, I generally drill in on the moments that made it so great. You can talk about the show in general and just say, great movie, but why was it a great movie? Oh, that one scene, that moment when he turned and the camera came around and he said this,
and you feel
those
something.
Resonate. Yes, you feel something, whether it's laughter, tears, maybe it makes you angry, maybe it makes you want to, you get out of the theater and you want to go do something about it, but that's hopefully what we do in entertainment is not only entertain, but, sometimes inspire, maybe even educate. There's a lot of things that go into it. And I think with the Fairly Odd Parents, not only do you have a hell of a good time watching these kids try to deal with these crazy fairies and all these wishes, but you also see that, sometimes, you move to a new city and maybe you don't know everybody and you got to walk in and now you have this new stepbrother and you got to meet your new stepmom and that's okay, because as long as, the family is together and there's love and support and all that, then that's a great thing too. And I leaned into, especially I directed the finale of it. And we had this, Chris and Sam wrote this wonderful scene at the end where the family's all sitting on the couch together. And the father turns and says, "Can you ever remember a time when we weren't a family?" And to me, that was the 13 episode journey.
Wow. Was
to see, hopefully by the time you get to episode 13, you indeed go, can I even remember a time when they all weren't a family and close, so that's part of the journey.
Oh, that's so nice. I don't even know what to ask anymore. I feel like that's a good way to wrap it up. I mean, why don't I ask you this? We started off by talking about your, journalism and getting into your career as an actor and then reinventing yourself and finding new opportunities and developing this love for directing and stage management, et cetera, et cetera. And, you also said you've been in this, you're a staple now. How does it feel now sitting here, this moment, looking back at all this? Just like the father said, can you remember a time we were a family? How does Mike feel now about directing and where he's going and where he's been?
I guess in the times, Hollywood's a funny business because everything has to be what leads to the next job, right? So everything that you're doing, because we're a freelance business, which has made my journey a little more unique, is that I've been able to stay in a particular place for as long as I have. A lot of people work on 150, 200 shows in a lifetime. But I do think I look back, I don't know about you, but I always have this vision of, if you could go back and tap your younger self, right? It's such a powerful, dramatic narrative, the ability to go back and tap 14-year-old Mike and sitting in the theater and going, you can do this. I'll tell you this, the moment where I had that just incredibly grateful, thankful feeling and everything else is, I told you earlier, I produce and also direct Danger Force. And Chris called me up one day. He's like, "Hey, listen, we're writing in this villain producer, and we all were in the room, and we think you'd be good at that." And I'm like, "What, villain?" He's like, "No, no, no, no. You know what I'm saying? But I think it'd be a great part for you. Audition." And I was like, first of all, I was like, "What do you mean audition? I don't have the part." And I was like, "Okay, fine. Want me to audition? I'll audition." So I came out here in my office and had my wife set up the camera, and I got my sides printed, and I auditioned and sent it to casting, and they gave me the part. So I played this character named Deuce Van Nuys, who was this diabolical Hollywood producer using Danger Force to achieve his evil end. But I will tell you this: the first day, and I directed that episode. So my first scene, I was sitting in a van. I was a passenger seat in the van with all the other villains, and I'm sitting in the seat, and incredibly, my best friend and our camera coordinator and also fellow director Russ Reinzel was calling the shots, and he's like, "Okay, Mike, I think we're good." You know, I looked at the shots, and I was like, "Okay, well, let's do it." And so I hear Robin go, "Okay, we're rolling," and I hear the bell, and Molly comes out with the slate. And from my seat in the van, I look over and I see the slate, and it says, you know, directed by Mike Caron, director of photography, Michael Spotnick. And I was like, wow, how lucky am I to sit here and, you know, direct this show, also be an actor, something that 13-year-old me would have loved. And it was a lovely moment, you know, to get there, and not as an individual achievement, because I look out and I see my friend Robin, who's calling the rolling. I see my dear friend Russ, who's going to then say action. I see Chris behind the monitor smiling like this, like, "Oh my God, Mike's on camera." And I had my glasses off for the character, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, you look so different with your glasses," you know? And so, but it was the ability to do that surrounded by all my coworkers and my friends. And that's what made it so, what made that moment so fantastic. And so to answer that question, you know, for all of our listeners and listening to this is, you know, I know it's, you know, dreams come true in Hollywood, you know, from Pretty Woman, right? You know, Hollywood's the city where all dreams come true. And, you know, I encourage everyone, dream. It's okay. Dream. Your dreams are going to go in different directions, and sometimes the dream may not be exactly what you thought it was going to be, but dream big and work hard to get there. And you know, God bless you. Hopefully you have moments like I was able to enjoy, you know, that aha moment of like, wow, this is great, you know. And of course, there's tons of pictures I could send to my parents. I could send to my parents to say thank you for, you know, not when I call to say, "Oh, I'm getting out of journalism," not going, no, we're paying for college, you get a degree, you know, which they very well could have, and they did not. They chose to. They just loved and supported me. So, you know, that's.
Well, thank you for sharing that moment. That's so special, and also congratulations. That, you know, I feel like it's those rare moments that, you know, at least for me in animation, that I live for, and you can't really make them happen. And if you force it, it's not the same. And they just, you know, they just happen because you're putting yourself out there and doing something you love, and the world is giving that back to you. And I think that's amazing. You know, as we're wrapping.
Oh, go ahead. I'm so sorry, I interrupted.
I was just going to say, as we're wrapping up, you know, is there anything else you'd like to share, you know, for anybody listening? Any last final piece of advice or anything like that?
I would say, because I get this question a lot from my social media. And if you don't mind, I'd like to throw that out there. Mm-hmm. Only not like, hey, follow me on social media. I don't mean it like that, but I mean, part of why I got into social media, because it just did not appeal to me. I just was always like, I'm more of a private kind of person, but it did occur to me, especially on Henry Danger, when we were doing Henry Danger, the cast was so special and unique in that we just all had so much fun doing what we did. Yeah. And we just goof off all day long and play practical jokes and pranks. And it occurred to me that there's a lot of kids who love our shows that will never have a chance to come to the Burbank studios and meet these actors or whatever. So it hit me. I'm like, well, what if I start filming these things or taking fun photographs, and I can post it that way? Kids, and what I did not know at the time, all over the world could tap into that. And, you know, a show that they watch in Germany, Ukraine, they watch them in Brazil. Brazilian fans are amazingly passionate about Henry Danger. And as I would put these on my social, these kids were just like, oh my God, that's, you know, they had so much fun watching the fun we had.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I got into the social media and continue to do it as much as I do, because never forget, everyone listening, that we work in a business that without an audience, it don't matter. We do not make shows in a vacuum. We do not produce movies in a vacuum. If our fans, supporters, do not tune into the streaming, if they don't click your channel, if they don't post about it and everything else, you don't get to do the show. So never forget the fans and, you know, who you're making this show for. And again, back to the paycheck. I know we're all making our paycheck, but never forget that it's a dual process. You know, I mean, it's awfully hard to act in an empty theater, and it's awfully hard to do a show with no one watching. So, so for all you listening, you know, be very aware of that, that what you are doing in that little studio, wherever you're doing it, your voice echoes around the world, believe it or not. I mean, it's crazy. And also, whatever job you get, whatever it is in Hollywood, more often than not, your first job is not going to be what you graduated from college or what you aspired, what you thought would be. Do the best you can. Do the best you can at it. I don't care if you're scrubbing the floors of the Universal lobby. Scrub them, make them shine. Yeah. And when people walk by and you're talking, and, you know, without being rude, obviously, ask questions. People have a crazy capacity to want to help, is, you know, if you engage them that way or ask advice. That's why these podcasts are so much fun, because we get to have these conversations. And hopefully someone listening to this goes, maybe I was either inspired by it or I learned something from it. But that's what I tell you all to do is do the best you can, because you never know who's going to recognize it and where that could lead, you know. And then, you know, as far as actors and writers and everything else, that's what I said about writing. You want to be a writer? Get this out and start writing.
Yeah.
You want to be an actor? Get your phone out, put it on a tripod or whatever, start acting, get your friends together. You know, that phone, you can film, you can write a script, you can film your script, you can edit your script, you can distribute your script, all with this. So do it. Do it. They might just be horrifically bad. And someday you'll look back at it, because now everything lives forever, and be like,
as you should look back on it and it should be like, wow, I've improved a lot. That's how it should be.
Yes. But by doing it, you just said the key word, you improve, you learn something. Yeah. Nothing happens. I always say, that someone can open a door for you, but guess what? You walk through. Exactly. You gotta go in there and do what you gotta do. So anyway, that's my long. I hope that wasn't preachy. No,
it was great.
That's just coming from someone who's been around long enough.
You dropped so much. I'm really happy we chatted. I loved hearing your story. That whole wisdom drop at the end was great. Plus I just love your mentality of how you're approaching your career, which I think shines through at just our talk. The whole everybody can be a hero. This is a big team. I love how, if you go to your social media like TikTok or whatever, you can instantly see how everybody's just having a good time because you post all these behind the scenes, whatever. So I just love that you're also thinking about who's watching it and whatnot. So yeah, this was a nice chat. I'm really happy about it.
Well, no, and thank you to you. I mean, we were talking before this started, and in your story, you were like, well, I just sort of started this as a thing, and all of a sudden it blew up. And well, because what you're doing, obviously you're doing it well, or else people would, again, podcast.
I'm always amazed that, who's actually listening to this and watching this. I get messages every once in a while saying, so-and-so inspired me, or actually reached out to this person. And so many random connections, and people have gotten jobs through just listening to this and reaching out, which I think is amazing. And I want to keep this going for as long as I can. Eventually I'll just have talk to everybody. Well, anyways, I want to be conscious of your time, but thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you enjoyed this as well.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I anytime you get to look, we get to talk about what we love to do. So why wouldn't you do it? I mean, it's a wonderful thing that we can do with the voice of the media that Hollywood provide, whether it be a podcast, a show, TV show, and and again, here I am, a little further down the road going, when I first got here going, man, that guy or that woman, they're old, 25 years in the business. How old are they?
Don't start thinking like that at all, please.
Now I know, because I'm sitting here saying what they said to me, and I'm going, "Hey, kid," but I'm just privileged enough to be able to do that. My gosh, thank you for allowing me to. Thank you for giving me the medium to sit here and talk with you.
Of course, thank you so much, Mike. And if you're listening, and you, of course, check out Fairly Odd Parents, Fairly Odder on Paramount Plus. And you can also follow Mike's social media. I'll include his Instagram, his Twitter, and his TikTok in the description of this podcast. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for listening. Okay, bye. The music for this podcast was composed by Will Farmer and the graphics by Daniel Abensauer. I encourage you to look them up if you enjoyed their work.